Is there a level where you're looking at going short crypto in general?
Yeah, so what for me at least with Bitcoin now, so it's consolidated here, right? So if we go in, we've been chopping here. You did get a topping tail right here. Topping tails are bearish reversal signals, and you can see that Bitcoin did fall off of that. For me, if we got a big move up to 30,000 right here, then I would absolutely short Bitcoin at that point. It's such a powerful resistance here in terms of the charts that would be the high probability pullback level. Now again, would I hold it till 15 or 16,000? Probably not, because again, you don't know at that point if the lows are in. But what I would do is I would leg out. I'd probably, once we're back to, let's say, 25,000 from 30, I would take a quarter off. And then at 20, take a quarter, kind of like inch out,
Yeah.
but let a little bit run on the downside.
Do you try and play that trade to like 25 to 28, or is it too much of like a small margin for you?
Yeah, so I mean that would be possibility, right? So for me, it would be one of these things where there's a big level here. Also, if we look at this high area right here, right? So kind of right where we came up to and kissed, we have the high of this consolidation level, and that's kind of where we've stopped up. So what you could do is if you get a good bull flag and it gets above this level, you could play it for a run if it gets above 25. 230, and that would be interesting for me. It's because we've already run up so much. It would be one of those scenarios where I would probably put a very small amount of money in, but you could absolutely do that. Again, it's all about that risk management of how much you're putting into that trade.
Could you explain like what an echo bubble is, and if you think that's kind of the situation we're in right now?
Yeah, I would just say that I absolutely agree that is what happens, and you do see it. It's like a reverberation, right? So you get in these, you have these amazing bull markets, and I kind of touched on it earlier, where you have this scenario where you had such an amazing market move in 2021, and everyone remembers it, right? It was like the good old days. And so we want to naturally, it's human psychology to go back and remember how much money we made. Remember when I made 5x or 100x on Dogecoin. And so you, just as human nature is, we want to believe it's going to happen again. And so you get these periods where you have these relief rallies, short covering rallies, and then it excites people and they start to believe again, right? And I think that's exactly what we're in right now. And it does happen. Every bull market, if you look at the declines after a bull market, you'll have these pockets of these bull bounces along the way. And again, we call it bull traps or something like that. But yeah, it absolutely happens.
What's your outlook for equities and I guess Bitcoin heading into the tail end of 2023? Do you think like we see a positive response heading into next year and kind of kick off the typical cycle that crypto tends to follow?
So I'm in more in the camp that the equity markets will collapse in the second half, and that'll take Bitcoin down. But I do think Bitcoin bottoms out in 2023 towards the end of the year. Initially, I was even thinking May or June, but based on the cycles that I'm seeing playing out right now, it seems somewhat unlikely that we'll see that bottom yet. But I do think later in the year, the stock market dumps, and then we see Bitcoin kind of follow suit. But there's this pivot point where all of a sudden we start to see Bitcoin catch a bid at the lows, and it starts to reverse even without the stock market as we get clarity on regulations. And this is one of those things where if you're someone who loves Bitcoin long term, just you can dollar cost average, but leave yourself some side money to go in later on, right? If it does dump, you want to be able to buy at lower lows. If not, you have some exposure to the upside. But yeah, I do think the second half of the year will be tough, and that's even going into the halving next year. I think Bitcoin will start to rebound into that, but I do think before then we go down.
Yeah, do you believe in halving cycles? Do you think that's a real catalyst for Bitcoin as it has been in the past, or do you think now maybe because I guess the market's so aware of the halving that it kind of has less of an impact?
So I do think that you're correct on that. If the more investors are aware of something, the more they'll try to front run it, and you'll see kind of a float up a little bit, and then smart money starts to use that to their advantage to unload into. So I do think there's something to it, but a lot of times as we get into it, and when everyone's already talking about it, like, oh, that's going to be the low, so it's almost like a killing prophecy where everyone says it and then it doesn't necessarily end up being the key case. So again, I think maybe the halving turns out to be the low on Bitcoin or right around there, maybe a little bit earlier, but I don't necessarily know if we'll see this monster rally going into it.
So which markets and assets do you primarily trade?
Definitely stocks. And the only reason I would love to trade crypto more, and I don't even day trade crypto really, because for the most part, there's not enough volatility. Like I'm someone who needs volume in a trade. And the reason I like volume in a trade is because it gives me protection. It means that if I have a large position and there's enough liquidity, I can get out of that position. It also means that if there's a big player and if it's a very thin crypto, if that player dumps, it's going to wreck my trade. I don't want to put myself in that risk factor position. So with liquid things, I'm really limiting myself to like the top 20 cryptos. And really, we know that from the top 20 cryptos, for the most part, everything moves with Bitcoin. So really what you're reduced to is, as a swing trader, you're like, am I bullish Bitcoin or am I bearish? Which one, right? And so there's just not a lot of opportunities in crypto like there is in stocks, where you have earnings and you have all these other things going on a daily basis, and these moves up and down. This is very reminiscent. We're seeing this big pump up recently. And I think for me, it's looking at it in a holistic approach and saying, okay, to me, this looks very much like during the dot-com collapse, when we had these bounces, and it got people very bullish very quickly, because we all remember how amazing 2021 was. And it was 2000 and 1999 back then. And so you get this kind of sentiment rush of greatness, and like, oh my God, I can make the same amount of money I made in 2021. Problem is, it's usually during the bear market here, it's usually going to be kind of a bear trap or a bull trap. So I think that's, for me, the issue here, is that it makes me think we still have some downside to go in Bitcoin. But I do think in 2023, we finally bottom out. I think regulation will help with that. And I think finally, people will start to view at least Bitcoin as more of a safety gold, kind of digital gold hedge versus the overall stock market.
I know you're mostly an equities trader and mostly trade Bitcoin as well, but do you have any opinion on like Ethereum and some of these altcoins as well?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, in chart terms anyways, Ethereum, to me, same kind of thing. If Bitcoin's going to roll over, I think Ethereum comes in as well. But what I love about Ethereum is that if we actually get to a point, right, where we have the regulation and we know what a security is, and I'm assuming that Ethereum will be classified as a security, then I think that you have some real interest in investing behind it. And again, to me, this Ethereum would be like Apple Computer, right? Or like Apple, in terms of they have so many things built on top of their platforms, where there is a lot of value here. Now, again, I don't know a lot about some of the altcoins, like when you go down past the top 20, but I mean, even look at Solana, right? Solana can process 50,000 transactions per second, even faster than Ethereum. I mean, there's definitely some use cases for this stuff. So for me to feel comfortable in investing in a lot of these, though, I need to know the rules, right? What are the security rules that the SEC is going to bring forth? And I think institutions are in the same boat. Once we get that, then we can make decisions on how much capital to allot.